Good evening, Board. Pedro Almeida, Chief Operations Officer for School District 49. I'm going to go ahead and present a briefing on building capacity for middle schools within the district. The agenda is on the slide. I want to point out that as we start this discussion, that this is tied in with and following the strategic planning efforts that we've had within the district for the last couple of years. We've briefed the board multiple times in annual planning summits, as well as our overall strategic priority of improving our facility posture across the district. So we'll talk about the context of district growth, descriptions and plans, financing, intelligent risk, and community outreach. I will point out to the board as well as to the public who is listening that this slideshow was intended to be mostly a standalone slideshow, so folks should be able to get most of the information off of the slides. The context for the growth, pointing out very quickly areas of active development as we look across District 49, the area you see highlighted in red. You'll notice in particular south of the black dot, which is representing central office, you'll see a lot of growth in the vicinity of Banning Lewis Ranch area. Also growth that's taken place in the Falcon Zone, Meridian Ranch, and also north of the central office. So over time, we have significant growth and development going on across the district. This slide shows enrollment trends as we're looking across District 49. We've seen tremendous growth that really started picking up steam around 1995 and has been on a very steep slope since. And we project that that's going to continue for many years going to the future. And this is showing a 20-year outlook with an approximate number of a total of 30,000 students 20 years from now. Middle school enrollment trends are shown on this slide, and this is directly what we're talking about is building capacity for middle schools within the school district. I'm going to point to the Falcon Middle School slide on the top right to just kind of orient you to the slide. You'll notice the gray bar going across that represents core capacity within the schools. That is what the main school building is built to hold. Above that, you'll see a red line, and that red line represents modular capacity, temporary buildings that we have on the campuses. You'll see that each one of the middle schools that we have, each have modular capacity. You'll notice that as we look across all three of our middle schools, Falcon Middle School, Skyview, and Horizon Middle School, that we are already above core capacity in all of those schools, and we have district growth that is continuing. We want to note to the community and to the public at large that relying upon temporary buildings is not a solution for the growth you saw in the previous slide. It simply is not a tenable answer. It costs us a lot of money to maintain these temporary buildings. They fall into disrepair. They're not as secure as our permanent buildings. There's all kinds of reasons why we do not want to rely on modular buildings across the district. I want to remind the public and remind the community that's listening of the major MLO projects, mill levy override projects that we've had since 2016. We've had 5 projects totaling approximately $60 million. All of those projects were completed on time, under budget, and that included the construction of 2 entirely new schools. So we've got a good track record in recent years, a lot of great work that's being done across the district, but we know we have to do a lot more as we continue to move forward. I'm going to get into the descriptions and the plans. We're talking about building capacity for middle schools to address those 3 middle schools I showed you on an earlier slide, and the capacity and the growth that we have in those schools, and the need that we need for more student space and more seats. We have 2 projects that we are moving forward with. That is, one is the construction of a new middle school. The first one is, you'll notice it's project MS23-226. We have defined a new naming convention within the district, and I'll orient you to that now. When we say MS, that's standing for middle school. 23 is the year that we're planning for completion. And then the last 3 digits, 226, is related to the code that the building will maintain within the district. Every building within the district has a 3-digit code that we use for business and accounting purposes and for a number of different functions within the district administratively. 226 will be the number for this building once it's complete. So this will allow us to track finance records, track the construction records in future years. We'll be able to refer back to it. So you'll see that naming convention not only for this project, but for other projects that we'll have in future years. The second project that we'll talk about is the addition onto Bennett Ranch Elementary School. That one does not have a code name because we actually have a school name. It is Bennett Ranch Elementary School, so that one will be an addition. We're going to talk about each of these in some detail. So let's start off by talking about MS23226. You'll see the key players on the design team toward the bottom of that slide. You'll see we have representatives from a number of different offices across the district. The lead planner is Melissa Andrews, and the lead construction rep, once we start building, will be Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown is in the back of the room over there. giving everyone a high five. He will be the lead construction rep as we are in this phase of planning, in this phase of this project. Melissa Andrews, who's unfortunately unable to be here tonight, is the lead planner in coordinating all of this effort and looking at the planning details behind it. 100,000 square foot school is what we're planning on, 900 students. You'll see there the grades 6 through 8. The DLR group will be the designer. We'll have an owner's rep for this project, which is Wember, and then Nunn Construction is the team that'll be building. The location, as we look at MS 23226, you'll see the tan or gold-colored star that's in the middle of the slide, toward the lower left of the slide. You'll also see on red the current middle schools that we had just talked about on the previous slides, just for orientation purposes. Falcon Middle Schools are towards the top. To the left of the star is Skyview Middle School, and to the lower left of the slide is Horizon Middle School. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. As we look at the project itself, you'll notice that the new middle school is going to be in the area of that green shade, where the star again is representing the location. To the left is Mark Shuffle Road. If you'll see just next to Mark Shuffle Road for orientation, there's a white dot there. That is the water tower that we always see when we're driving by the intersection of driving northbound on Mark Shuffle in the vicinity of Barnes Road. Barnes Road will extend to the east. You'll see an area to the south of the word Barnes Road, where you see a bunch of roads that look like they're not completed. That area is already full of houses. This photo is just an old picture from Google Maps. And we have construction that's also taking place, obviously, to the north of Stetson Hills Boulevard. The land dedication has been provided by Norwood Homes. They've been a great partner with us, and they'll continue to be a great partner with us as we have to work within the footprint that they are developing throughout Banning Lewis Ranch, as well as to the north of further north in the area. One of the key questions when we start looking at building a new school is what's going to be the boundary adjustments? What neighborhoods are going to go to the school? How is it going to impact boundaries as we look across the district? And in this particular case, we're also looking at a zone boundary change. So the key questions we had to look at as we're reviewing and planning for this new middle school is what zones will the new middle school be a part of, and which elementary schools will matriculate into 23-226. The factors that we planned for and we reviewed included all the factors that you see listed there on the slide. Projected student growth, planned home construction, school capacity, both our current school capacity as well as projected school capacity, elementary school populations and capacity, middle schools where we are right now, as well as high schools. The interesting thing about building a new middle school is it affects all three tiers of our education system, because it's impacting what students are flowing into it from the elementary level, as well as where those students are going to matriculate out of this new middle school and what high schools they will go to. So we took all of that into consideration. Also, a key point that we were very concerned about was minimizing disruption on current families that are currently in elementary schools, because we want to try to minimize that disruption to the greatest extent possible. We looked at 10 options. So when you have a chance to see and shake hands again with Melissa Andrews, pat her on the back, because what I'm about to show you is a number of is the configuration that we have landed on for the plan, but that was after we looked at 10 different configurations and looking at populations and projections for all of these different configurations that we possibly could have addressed. We looked at Springs Ranch Elementary School, Stetson Elementary School, Odyssey Elementary School, Inspiration View, and Falcon Elementary School. These were all possible solutions based on geographic location that could feed into and matriculate students into this new middle school. I'm going to talk about zone boundary changes first, and then I'm going to go into each one of the elementary schools that are impacted. As you look at this overview slide, the zone boundary changes that are shown here, you'll see where Falcon Zone, you see up in the eyes footprint, there's a portion of land that used to be Falcon Zone that will now be rezoned into the Power Zone. That's in the blue in the upper right of the slide. You'll see a portion where the Power Zone is going to transition to the Sand Creek Zone, and a portion on the right where the Falcon Zone is going to transition into the Sand Creek Zone. For orientation on the slide, I should have done this initially. You'll see that the blue area at the top is the Ives Middle School, and you'll see Inspiration View, Elementary School. Inspiration View is pictured there in purple. The new middle school is going to be just over here in the middle of the slide where it says MS 23-226, and some other elementary schools are shown around the zone. I'm going to come back to the slide as a recap on the backside, but right now I'm going to go into each one of these elementary school footprints, and I'll orient you to each one of those discussions, or each one of those new footprints. For Inspiration View, the current boundaries for Inspiration View are in the left, in the shaded pink area. You'll see that the current boundaries for Inspiration View extend all the way to the south to the vicinity of MS23-226's new location. And you'll see that it's also the boundary to the left of it is where it meets with Stetson Elementary School in the yellow. The proposed boundary shift we are talking about is moving the boundary for Inspiration View to the north and also extending it to the east. So now you see a piece to the right where it says Dublin Road that is now part of Inspiration View, and that piece comes out of the Falcon Zone. By making this boundary adjustment, if you'll notice the graph on the right, with that new boundary, the projected number of students in that new boundary is shown with the graph that's on the right. You'll notice that it is below the core capacity for Inspiration View. The population for Inspiration View continues to grow every single year as we continue to add houses in the Inspiration View footprint, and that will continue to happen. I'll also point out at the bottom of the slide in the box, something to keep in mind is that all of these projections that we're showing you assume all students within that footprint are going to that school. That is not the case. Whenever we have a charter school or whenever we have a new charter school that comes in, that will change these projections and could potentially lower the projections. But from a planning purpose right now, we have to do it based off of rough projections that Melissa diligently works at by analyzing the expected development that we're seeing coming in each one of these footprints. So that's Inspiration View. Going down to the south now, Stetson Elementary School. Currently, Stetson Elementary School is that yellow area on the left side of the slide, on the current boundary slide. You'll notice that we're extending the Stetson Elementary School boundary all the way to the east, past the extended Banning Lewis Ranch Parkway, all the way to Highway 24 on the right. So this basically will expand Stetson Elementary School into what used to be a portion of Inspiration View's footprint, as well as used to be part of the Falcon Zone footprint. If you'll notice on this slide, we have both a gray line for the core capacity, but Stetson also has modular capacity as shown there in red. You'll notice that with this new projection that we start going past the core capacity with Stetson Elementary School very, very fast. I want you to keep in mind, we're talking about building a new middle school. What will happen very quickly on the back end of this, probably within 2 years of completing this middle school, is we will be adding another elementary school, if not 2 more elementary schools to the district. And this area is a primary candidate where we would expect to put in the next elementary school. So when you see that growth, that tremendous growth that's taking place on the right of the slide, don't be too alarmed about it because our solution will be elementary school growth that's going to take place in this area as this entire area develops. We move on to Springs Ranch Elementary School, further again moving now to the south. Springs Ranch current boundary is shown on the upper slide, and all we're going to do is extend that from where you see the current east boundary all the way over to Highway 24. In both cases here, for both Springs Ranch and for Stetson, and frankly for the Inspiration View change I showed you earlier, all of these changes affect relatively few families that are currently existing because the area is not yet developed. So you'll notice where you have this extension for Springs Ranch to the east, there's a few students out there, a handful, but there aren't many. These are not densely populated areas right now, but they will be as the future comes along. And you'll see we stay well below the core capacity for Springs Ranch Elementary School as we move to the future. Those are the elementary schools that are impacted by this change. Let's go ahead and talk about the middle schools now. Horizon Middle School. The current boundary for Horizon Middle School includes Springs Ranch Elementary School. As you can see on the top slide, the Springs Ranch Elementary School is shaded in this kind of a rusty pinkish color because it is part of the Sand Creek Zone and is part of the Horizon footprint. As we make this change, Springs Ranch will turn into a yellow area, which is going to be feeding into the new middle school. And so therefore, Horizon Middle School, instead of having 3 elementary schools flowing into Horizon will have 2 elementary schools flowing into it. Evans Elementary School, which is on the far south of the slide, as well as Remington Elementary School. So Horizon will have fewer number of elementary schools feeding into it, but again, keep in mind, as we look at growth of elementary schools in the future, this eastern part of our boundary is where we're going to grow elementary schools, and eventually, Horizon will probably find itself receiving a 3rd elementary school feeding back into it. And you can see with the projected new boundary, we now bring Horizon Middle School down beneath its core capacity initially, and it starts going above it slightly, but we still have a lot of modular capacity that's there existing at Horizon. The new middle school, MS23-226, the project that we were referring to, you'll see it highlighted. This would be the footprint for MS23-226, the area that's shaded in yellow. You'll notice that we start off, we'll have plenty of capacity in that school as we continue to move to 2025 in a couple of years after it's completed. Because again, this will have 2 elementary schools feeding into it, Springs Ranch Elementary and Stetson Elementary. But eventually we will add an elementary school in this footprint that will likely feed again into this new middle school. So the plan is intended to take into account elementary school growth in this area to feed into Horizon as well as into MS 23-226. So again, to recap, the boundary change, same slide I showed you earlier. You can see the chunks of land that used to belong to Falcon Zone move into Power Zone, and a couple of pieces of land that used to be Power Zone and Falcon Zone that are moving into the Sand Creek Zone. And Sand Creek Zone expands to the north. Stetson's footprint, Stetson used to be, or prior to this, or currently Stetson is part of the Power Zone. Stetson Elementary School will now become a Sand Creek Zone school. Timeline, aggressive target. We're looking at opening up the new school in August of 2023. I'm going to explain to you when I get toward the tail end of the briefing why this is an aggressive timeline. It sounds like it's a lot, but it really isn't. We have 2 years to design and build. The design process is already underway, and the construction partner is on board with us as we'll continue to move forward. Switching gears, Bennett Ranch Elementary School addition. The concept here is that we already have a consolidated campus at Bennett Ranch Elementary School with Falcon Middle School. There is an executive principal who runs both of those campuses, and we already have sixth graders that are using excess capacity at Bennett Ranch Elementary School. So sixth graders from Falcon Middle School are already using space at Bennett Ranch Elementary School because we have the capacity there. The concept here is that we will put a building addition onto Bennett Ranch Elementary School, add an entirely new wing, a significant growth in that building size, and then we will place sixth graders for the Falcon Zone that will actually have their classes inside of that new wing. But those sixth graders are still part of Falcon Middle School, which is just slightly down the hill. So those sixth graders will be able to go down, participate in activities, participate in sports, participate in all the middle school activities, but they'll still be on that consolidated campus, which has both Falcon Middle School as well as Bennett Ranch Elementary School. The benefits of following this path. Number one, we don't change student matriculation within the Falcon Zone. Students in Falcon Zone right now, if they're going to middle school, they're going to this consolidated campus. They will continue to go to this consolidated campus once this addition is built. Second, we will increase the capacity for the Falcon Zone for middle school students, which we need to do because Falcon Middle School, as you saw from our earlier slide, Falcon Middle School is also pretty full. This maintains flexibility for us for future use. When we build this additional wing onto Bennett Ranch Elementary School, Bennett Ranch Elementary School will have the flexibility as the district grows for us to utilize it as an elementary school, as a middle school, as a K-8 school. As we move into future years in the district and we want to think about how we want to leverage that building, we will maintain the flexibility with Bennett Ranch Elementary School in years ahead. And of course, this will save design costs because the design for this portion of the building has already been completed. When we built Bennett Ranch just a few years ago, it was built intended as a two-phase project, but the design was already done. So we're taking that existing design and we're going to go ahead and build the additional wing. Which saves us a significant amount of money from a design cost perspective. We're almost doubling the size of the building. Right now it's 63,000 almost 64,000 square feet. We're going to add another 57,000 square feet on there to give us 300 additional students. And on this one, GH Phipps is the contractor. We'll also have an owner's rep. The enrollment. For this particular slide, I'll ask you to pay attention. First of all, this is for Falcon Middle School, and we're talking about the building at Falcon Middle School and the building at Bennett Ranch Elementary School. For Falcon Middle School, if you look at that top graph, you'll notice the gray bar is the core capacity of the school. The red bar contains the capacity with the modular space that we have there. The light green area on that top slide is representing if we made no changes and we continue to operate the way we are now, you'll see that we're already bumped up against that red bar. We would continue to go higher past it. Once we make the change and we build the addition on the Bennett Ranch Elementary School, the population of that building would drop down to the dark green bar. On the bottom slide, same concept, but you'll see the trend is in reverse. That's Bennett Ranch Elementary School. In this particular case, the yellow line represents phase one, the current existing building for Bennett Ranch. The red line represents the additional growth that we will put onto the building, additional capacity we will put onto the building once we build the addition. And right now we are operating in the dark green area. I'm sorry, right now we're operating in the light green area, but once we add on the additional capacity and we bring sixth graders into that school, we'll be operating in that dark green area, and you'll see that we'll still be below the capacity of the building once we have the addition built. Bennett Ranch timeline. This slide is different than what you received in your packet. Why? Because I gave you the submission on the packet on Monday. The world of construction is changing so fast that yesterday afternoon we found out that we actually need to move this target completion date to May of 2023. The slide that was in your packet initially in board docs was reflecting opening up this addition in January of 2023. What is happening right now is what I'm going to explain on the next slide, which are all the challenges we have in the construction world. But the bottom line is right now our target is that we're looking at May 2023 completion, with students starting to use this wing in August of 2023. Same time as the middle school. From a financing perspective, two key points here. We're looking at $85 million for both of these projects as we look across the board. Right now, as we look across the district and across the entire city, obviously, assessed value is growing very rapidly on houses. So we're using the existing fixed rate MLO income that's coming off of the MLO override that we had created back in the last few years. And that's the funding source for both MS 23-226 as well as for this addition on the Bennett Ranch. The key point here is because of the pre-planning that this district has done and the smart way that we configured that, under the guidance of the Chief Business Officer, we do not need to go to our voters for a bond. We do not need to go to our voters for a ballot initiative to build this entire middle school, as well as an addition on top of this. I'm not going to talk any more about that because I will definitely defer to the Chief Business Officer, Mr. Ridgway, who will be touching upon this in great detail on June 23rd. He mentioned that earlier in tonight's meeting. Last slide. Risk factors. I have to highlight this with great emphasis for both the board and for the public and everyone who's listening. There are a lot of risks that are associated with this from a perspective of cost and timeline. In the first piece, as we talk about MS 23-226, we're building this building in a footprint that is not developed. So we have no roads, we have no bridges, we have no infrastructure, we have no utilities, nothing is existing there right now. So we are very dependent upon the contractors, I'm staying corrected, the developers, to continue to develop this area in an effective timeline. And anything that they do that throws that off can impact us for the purpose of this project. Right now, we're watching for the master planning that's taking place because that will impact our design, and that can slow us down right from the beginning. So we're working very closely with them, and they're working diligently on this. The second thing that I'll point out outside of MS 23-226 is for both of the projects, supplies and costs are a concern. It is an extremely volatile world out there right now for construction materials. Anybody who's building anything will tell you that. Not only are the costs going up dramatically, but also timelines are changing. The reason that the Bennett Ranch Elementary School addition was just changed yesterday was because we determined once we reached out to our steel supplier for the purpose of the beams and the steel structure, the delay time on that it went from 6 to 8 months to 10 to 12 months. So while we have to wait 10 to 12 months, that is going to impact our ability to start construction on Bennett Ranch Elementary School addition. We were planning on starting construction in just a few months. We now expect we're going to start construction in February, and that's what's leading to that pushback from January to May of 2023. So that question of availability of supplies can impact Bennett Ranch. It can also impact MS 23-226 once we get to that point. The second piece I'll point to is the price volatility that's out there is simply incredible. We've all heard the news reports. PVC piping's gone up like 300% in the last year. Wood's gone up crazy amounts of money. It's just the prices of everything are going up, and that's going to make it a budget challenge from a projection and budget tracking piece. So we want to make sure we're emphasizing this to our public, to our community, to our staff, and to the board very strongly that cost, concern, because we don't know where the price is going to go. Timeline is a concern because these delays can impact this timeline. We have very aggressive timelines for both of these projects, and we may or may not be able to hit them. We'll have a better idea of that in a year. I said that was the last slide. This is really the last slide. We will go ahead and push this back to the community for feedback. We'll do a public information campaign for the next couple of months and receive thoughts and concerns. We want to hear from the community about any kind of thoughts, concerns, and feedback they have, and then we'll take that into account and look at for plans for the future.